In the winter of 2010 and 11, I invited Maria Chavez to curate an innovative series of sound installations at my newly formed art space in Brooklyn, New York. My name is Kelly Armendariz. I am the director of Splatterpool Artspace. I founded Splatterpool with the mission of supporting an inclusive network of local artists working in a wide array of artistic practice, from documentary photography to new digital media to queer performance art. The Dead of Winter Works Sound Art Series was included as the centerpiece of our first season and launched Splatterpool's Curator-in-Residence program. Maria was chosen because of her dedication to the sound art community and shared interest in providing a nurturing forum for new ideas and creative challenge.
The sound installations created in this series include the works of 6 active sound artists and musicians working within the music and art world in New York City. Whether producing a sonic sculpture alongside a projected image, like in the first section, Sound and Image, utilizing sound as an ephemeral influence of the social space, as is witnessed in the second section, Sound and Interaction, or interpreting the idea of sound installation into an actual object to be experienced by the public, as in our third section, entitled Sound and Object. The world of sound is ever-changing and evolving.
I like to think, or I like to feel that in my work, everything emerges from making the work itself. You start from making a mark, or from thinking that something is interesting, something moves you or motivates you, and then you start putting things together, and then ideas might emerge from that, from the process. I'm a composer and a sound artist that has a strong connection to visual arts, or like I see sound as a visual artist, or my sound art comes from a visual art experience. I was looking at some films that were in a storage room, and I asked the technician there if I could have some of his films, and he said, yeah, just take whatever you want. When I went to the studio and I put it back to the projector, it was a film that is called Cromwell, and I wasn't thinking, oh, I'm gonna use I'm gonna appropriate a film and do something with it. So to me, it was just a film that I needed to erase so I could use the film again. So I just put the whole thing in a bucket of bleach. But then when I noticed that it was so much film, the bucket wasn't that big enough. It was taking too long, and I just took it out and tried to by hand get rid of as much information as I could. So in terms of appropriation, that was kind of like, was more a consequence of trying to do something else and then going with it to see where it would take me.
It's like I remember first time hearing certain forms of digital music and realizing that people's listening had completely been transformed by it. I mean, sounds that like in a kind of aesthetic realizations that eventually resulted in microsound. That kind of glitch in microsound were initially bad artifacts of digital audio, you know, and I started missing analog sound, really, and I started I just lost any I gave up in having any belief in like sampled, banked, buffered audio as my toolkit, and I wanted any other kind of audio, and it didn't really matter to me what it was. At this point, I'm in Dumbo. I'm kind of living in what used to be my friend's painting studio in Dumbo, and I have roommates of all different sorts that come and go, and one roommate left an old Belgian-made RGB video monitor there. It was a well-made monitor, but it was really old. It was from the early 70s or something. It had separate inputs for the 3 color channels, so that's RGB stands for. And I was sitting around there one cold winter, kind of, you know, distracted and not knowing exactly what to do, and they had moved out and they had left the monitor, and I was like, well, what am I going to do with this? And there are my 2 oscillators sitting on the table, and then there's the monitor there, and really I'm like this, and the only thing you need to do to make an image with sound is plug an oscillator into one of those channels, and in that era of analog video, that's how it worked. So I plugged in an oscillator and I made a 60 hertz tone, and then it made a big fat red bar sitting right in the middle of the screen, and then I realized, oh, this was the basis of the old video synthesizers. Also figuring into all this is at some point in the early part of this decade I read John Geiger's book about Brian Geisen called The Chapel of Extreme Experience, which functioned to, it recuperated a whole lost area of my interest with the study of flicker and the flicker phenomenon. Flickering and symmetry are a part of, seem to be a part of all sacred traditions, which Jane's kind of talked about that in the bicameral book, but it's certainly, it becomes obvious in the dream machine flicker phenomena stuff. The drawings that are made are, could be the product of any culture, and they are the same sort of geometric forms and the same sort of pretty much symmetrical arrays of geometry that suggest a center point. That center point becomes the location of consciousness in a way.
One of the common factors that all the artists share in this series is a unique relationship with what I call the language of chance. Some artists came across their practice because of a chance encounter. Others utilize chance operations in their work in order to gain the results they seek. We now move into the section entitled Sound and Interaction. These artists choose to work with the public in order to completely remove themselves from the actual performance aspect of sound within an installation. This form of letting go allows the public to decide the sound placement or sound manipulation within a social environment. In this section, we speak with artist Byron Westbrook and artist collective Future Archaeology, a group of 5 multimedia artists whose common interests include the public, the environment, and technology. Byron, do you want to say a few words before?
I am. Geez. You hang on just one second. I'm going to turn all of these on. Is there anybody in here who doesn't know what an iTunes playlist is? I mean, it seems like that's something that's kind of part of the vernacular and everybody knows. That's key to what happens with these. every one of these speakers has an iPod Shuffle on the bottom of it, and it's loaded with a playlist, a different playlist in each one. But there are about 30 tracks on each one playing on random. These are all playing right now, actually, because only one track actually has sound on it. So basically, at some point, one of them will start making sound, but you guys can just, take them, pass them around, and everybody try to get your hands on one at some point over the course of this, and see what happens. I realized that finding accidents and introducing accident into a situation really helps me a lot and helps me kind of discover things. And I think I found that by writing music for an ensemble, it didn't have that energy of finding something, of discovering something while you're in the process of working or in the process of creating. During the time that I was playing in rock bands, I started seeing people perform solo that were able to get kind of this same sort of like layered experience that you would get with a band. And I guess I just, for some reason, I mean, maybe it was just those specific people, but I guess they seemed to be working with the same sort of material, I would say, that I was working with in terms of like subtlety and whatnot. I just started doing what I'm doing now based on the idea of just wanting to do something by myself. I say all this though, and it's come full circle, because now I'm like, just as of the last couple of months, I'm looking into ways that I can perform with other people, and now my installation work, it's not about me performing at all, it's about engaging with an audience and how, like, the social interaction involved. And so in that sense, I have to come back around to that, and those, I'm sort of dealing with those issues again, but just in a different way.
Future archaeology is obviously an invented discipline, and it's a little bit tongue-in-cheek, but I think we're conceiving of it as examining or presenting relics of an imagined future in the present, which involves new types of relationships between biological systems and electronic systems. Also, we're all friends.
So this is an experiment in the conductivity of both drawing, or an extension of the human hand, and also the human body. So throughout the rest of the evening, you'll be taking members of the audience and replacing pieces of electronics with your body.
Another part of it, I think, is creating systems that are on some level unpredictable, and that was part of the futurism of that project and maybe some of the other ones that we've worked on. Systems that we could set up and where we didn't actually know what it would do or what the results would be, and so kind of like pseudoscience that we were working on. And I think that's kind of followed us along to the current piece over the last 3/4 of a year or so.
On this piece, I think more than any piece we've done in the past, the piece that we're doing here, directly connects to that idea, because we're actually going to be bringing human beings into contact with the technology itself and into contact with each other. So we're highlighting this idea of connecting to another human being through a piece of equipment, through some kind of mediated force, and then also the ability to connect with the human being through your humanness, through your humanity, through your hand.
We knew we wanted to use graphite, and we'd been doing these experiments with inserting a piece of paper with a line drawn on it into a circuit and seeing as we, lighten or darken the line, the changes, erase. Tom was actually doing some fabulous experiments that were really fun to watch, but we started thinking about, like, how is this going to be best utilized in the gallery space?
It's hard. We need more erasers now. I think I don't know if there's any more erasers, but...
The fact that we're using graphite, which relates both to this fine art tradition and the idea of the human hand, but also it's actually something that comes out of the ground, and it's this really natural material. So we started looking into the actual structure of graphite and what makes graphite graphite. And it turns out it's this hexagonal structure that's common to all carbon, but the way that it's put together in graphite, it's these sheets that are layered on top of each other. So we're going to try to create kind of diagram-like structure that'll cover the wall, that'll suggest that layering, and kind of both refer to the actual structure of the graphite, but also become part of the circuit.
A lot of our work has been site-specific, so there were some specific concerns we were addressing in the gallery here. First, it being a gallery as such, so drawing was something that we were using to connect it to the tradition of gallery art and fine art. And then because it's centered around one night, that's where the context of a performance was introduced, which is also something that's new for us as a group.
Oh, this is pretty cool. Look at everybody's face.
The last section of this series is unique because the creators consider themselves musicians rather than sound artists. Both are active in the music world in New York City, boasting a number of musical accomplishments. I was curious to see how these musicians would interpret the idea of sound installation. Surprisingly, they both separately decided to build objects in a gallery as a means of expressing their abstract ideas of sound in an art space.
I started meeting other musicians and playing with other people, and that's when I started branching out and getting interested in more improvised and ambient music, and started collecting guitar pedals and exploring, the path I eventually took with my solo project Noveller. The early film work that I did involved a lot of collage of images that I either shot or with the found footage, and creating kind of an abstraction through layering. And I feel like the new stuff that I'm working on, or the films and artifact, it's deconstructing the layers. The focus is more kind of like on the process instead of just this kind of density that that forces abstraction. I could think about things, or I could choose to just focus on the repetition of sewing into celluloid. And I knew that I wanted this to be kind of like the seed for my installation. The sound portion of Artifact is, I kind of view it as like two different installations, but they kind of work in parallel, trying to think about how I could apply the same concept to sound. And that's how I developed the idea of the personal echo chamber with the tape loop playing. When people engage the chamber, they insert a piece of silence back into the tape loop, and the loop somewhat returns to its original state of just blank tape.
I'm a musician. I practice and I, studied classically and studied a ton of theory. So I definitely feel closer to the musician title versus the sound artist title. Basically, I'd worked with piezos in college on a very small scale, and there was the restroom at the Issue, when Issue was at the Silo, that had sound installations in it. It's a tiny little room, and it was very intimate. And when you send certain sounds through the piezo, it's really delicate, and very brittle. And I just was really inspired to do something larger than what I had done when I was in college, and came up with this idea of doing a sound chandelier. When Maria asked me to create a sound installation for Splatterpool, I just immediately went to this idea that I've had for about 5 or 6 years. And just over time, thinking about it, thinking about the form, I had worked on a photo shoot that had really focused on crystal chandeliers about a year prior to Maria asking me to make an installation. And that also inspired me to think more and develop my idea of the chandelier. That particular constellation is meant in mythology, the path of souls. It's like the water bearer pours the water into this constellation. So that made me definitely want to reach out to other people and invite people to submit a piezo, to submit a sound file, and to get these different personalities inside the chandelier.
With the Dead of Winter Works series, I wanted to use this curatorial opportunity to encourage these artists, who I consider my peers, to explore the usage and engagement of a gallery space in more detail. Each sound installation remained on view for one weekend following an opening performance by each featured artist. For a sound artist, an opportunity to hear your work live in a space for more than 24 hours is a luxury, since the art world still has issues with where to place sound in an art space. The Dead of Winter works only scratches the surface of the expanding world of sound. The ultimate goal of this series is to revisit these artists in 10 years and see how their practices have developed. In doing so, we can learn more about what sound can provide to those who choose it as their medium in the 21st century.